Well, good morning, Northview. How are y'all doing this morning? It is great to see you. It's great to be connecting with everybody who's watching online as well. We're so glad you could join us today. Hey, we're going to dive into this series in just a minute, but before we do, I got to know Super Bowl 59, where everybody's at, okay, here in the room. All right, so let me go Team Eagles. Team Eagles, where are you at? Where are you at? Okay, all right. Team Chiefs. All right, all right. How about Team Commercials? Yeah. Team Taylor? Okay, okay. And then maybe last, but certainly not least, how many of you, like me, are Team Ugh? Is this the matchup? Really? Yeah, that's where I'm at. And you know we're all going to watch it. And I'm not super thrilled about the game, to be honest with you. I'm just not, but I'm going to watch it. I always do. But, you know, here's the thing I can get behind. Here's the thing I can get behind. I can get behind the conversation that is inevitably going to take place after the game about legacy. Because one thing's for sure, legacy, specifically on the gridiron, is going to be written today. One team or the other, one way or the other, there is going to be some conversation and somebody's going to take a next step in their legacy. Now, the legacy conversation, maybe not so much on the football field, but in the big picture, in the stuff that matters, for the trophies that matter the most, that is a conversation that I love to have. I love to have that conversation. And I think that this series that we're in is going to propel us to ask those questions and to have the kind of conversations between us and God that are going to ensure that we leave the greatest legacy as it connects to our faith and our followership of Jesus. This is week 2 of a series called Learning Curve. And what this series is a journey through the Gospel of Luke. But it's a journey in the most kind of interesting of way because we're not going necessarily verse by verse or chapter by chapter, but instead we're going through the questions that Jesus asked as he was teaching and interacting with people. I found that in these questions, there are deep, reflective, powerful, life-changing conversations that God has with us when we do it. And each one of these questions is a way of almost inviting us to figure out, where am I in this relationship? Where is actually the status of this relationship at? Way back in my dating years, 100 years ago, my era of conversation, my buddies and I, we would talk about, have you had the DTR? Have you had the DTR with her? And, you know, DTR meant define the relationship. Have you had the define the relationship talk with her? I think there's in a lot of ways, these questions that Jesus asks are like inviting us to define the relationship. Who do you think and understand me to be? Where are we actually in our relationship? And this question we're going to look at today is a big one that does that. And it's tied to a sermon that Jesus preached, his most famous sermon, the Sermon on the Mount. Most people, when they look at the Sermon on the Mount, they're looking at Matthew 5, 6, and 7. It's also told in the Gospel of Luke, and that's where we're going to be looking today. We're going to be looking at Luke. And at the end of this, he poses a question that I think is designed to help us ask, why am I following? Why am I here? How in am I? Am I in because it's cool to be a follower? Am I in because I'm fully committed no matter what? Am I in because I'm in crisis or because it's convenient to do so? He asks this question at the very end of his sermon that just hits whoever hears it right between the eyes. Are you ready for it? Are you ready for it? Luke chapter 6, verse 46, Jesus asks this question: why do you call me Lord, but not do what I say? Why would you call me Lord and not do what I say? Why would you identify me as the leader, as the director, as your master, but not do what I say? I think this is like a knockout punch of a question. But fortunately, he puts this question with a parable that helps us understand that the reason he asked this question is for our blessing, not for our bludgeoning. He's actually asking this so that we could consider the way life and choices affect the trajectory of where you go. And so he tells this parable called the parable of the wise and foolish builder. It's Luke chapter 6, verse 47, where he says this, "As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they're like. They're like a man who's building a house, who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. And when the flood came, the torrent struck the house, but could not shake it because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete." This parable is short, but it's meant to be somewhat universalizing life and helping people to see a dichotomy. You either are one or the other. You either are the wise builder or the foolish builder. You're either on this path or that path. There isn't really an in-between. Which one are you on? This question, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say, is followed by this parable of the wise and foolish builder. The wise and foolish builder parable establishes a couple things. Number one, everybody is building. Everybody's a builder. Everyone is building. You are a builder. Everyone is building a life. The home is a metaphor for life. You are building a life. And it's through relationships and experiences and achievements and material things and influence and responsibilities. But step by step, day by day, decision by decision, you are building a life. We all are. So the parable is designed to ask a little bit of the question of, what am I building and what am I building on? So let me start with the first one. What am I building? What am I building? This week, Monday, I don't know what you guys did on Monday when it was crazy warm, like abnormally warm on a February day. But I made a commitment on that day when I saw that weather forecast. We are grilling, all right? I mean, like, that is a happy place for me after a day of work, is to come home and to fire up the grill, and just the whole journey, even if I'm just sitting around outside a little bit while that all goes down, it just relaxes me, and I don't get to do it in the winter very much. I know some of you purists have been grilling all the way through, Christmas time and all that, and we've done a couple, but it's miserable. It's not fun to be out there grilling when it's freezing outside. So this was one of those days where I was like, I'm doing it. It's great. So fired it up, and I'm sitting in a chair. Sun is on me. It's like 5:30. It's like I'm still feeling some sunlight at that time. It was just nice. It was just a nice night. But then the thought struck me, I've been hunkered down for several months, and I haven't done anything outside at all on the house. I might take this opportunity to just kind of walk around the house and just make sure there's nothing that needs tended to. And sure enough, as I'm walking around the house, I find a shingle in the grass. And I'm like, well, there you go. That's why we're on this walk. So now, then my eyes, I'm walking around the house, they're trying to identify, where did this guy come from? Because I got to get up there and fix it. Well, as I do, I'm looking up to where potentially the shingle came from, and I've got these two dormers that stick out from the second floor, windows with a different roof line and all that kind of thing on them. And I'm kind of going, I wonder if is that where that came from? It might be. I'm going to have to get up there and inspect a little closer. And then it strikes me this. I have, and this has always been kind of an interesting thing about my house, if you drive by my house, 35 mile an hour, you look at it, you go, it's a two-story house. Nice little dormer sticking off. No, actually, those dormers lead to nothing. There is no second floor. When you look at my house from the outside, it looks like we have a second floor. It looks like this house is bigger than it actually is. But those windows that are on those dormers lead to nothing. There's nothing up there. There's no finishable space even up there, the way the rafters are. And so what struck me is I have a second floor that is it is an illusion. and now I have to maintain the illusion. I'm going to have to go up and re-roof or re-shingle a spot that blew off that is in an area where it is doing absolutely functionally nothing. What a pain in the neck that is. And then I started thinking about what I was talking about this Sunday, and I was going, man, that is such a picture of the life that we build, right? And sometimes we build a life that we want to look a certain way, but upon closer inspection, you peek behind the window and you go, there's not even anything here. It's empty. It's empty. It's just empty space. Sometimes when Jesus would invite people to follow him, he would ask tough questions because he wanted you to look inside. His biggest debates were with the people who were prettying up the outside, but not doing any work on the inside. He would invite these questions so that people could ask, what actually am I building? What am I building? And sometimes we're simply putting dormers on the second floor and maintaining the appearance. In reality, there's nothing actually there. Everybody's building. What are you building? The second principle of the parable is this: not only that everybody's building, but every house will face a storm. And when the storms hit, it will reveal how the house was built. It will reveal the quality of the build. The parable says when the flood came, not when the rains came, not if they come. That's one of the most universal human realities. You are building a life. Your life will face storms. If you haven't faced them yet, you will face them. This parable is not a parable about how to avoid storms. It's not a parable about how to find the right climate or the location to build in so that there aren't storms. This is a parable about building strong houses that withstand storms. So many try to build a life that could avoid them when that's impossible, but everybody gets to ride out the floods of life, whether it's physical or emotional or financial or relational, and you never know when the storm is going to blow in. I can tell you, I didn't know that the storm was going to blow in my life last Sunday at about this exact time. Last Sunday, between the second and third service, I was just about to come out on stage for the third service. I ran back to my office quickly to grab my notes or something. I popped in, and my wife and my son were there, and they had kind of a deer in the headlights look. Now, they're not normally in my office at that point, so I was a little bit startled that they were even in there first. And then upon looking at them and just looking at their state, I went, okay, what's wrong? And she said, my wife said, Cameron, this is my oldest daughter, she's 20, Cameron was in a car accident. The car is totaled. She was a passenger. 2 other teammates were with her. I just got off the phone with her. They're up in Fort Wayne. I think everything's okay. I mean, I'm on stage in like 3, 2, 1. Okay, like I'm in a just moment of like, what is my response? What is my reaction? You know, and it's like, okay, I'm looking at my wife. She just had the conversation. I've got all kinds of thoughts swirling. I'm trying to figure out, should I be here? Should I be there? Should we leave? Should we go? How certain are you? You're just torn in a million. I got to preach one more time, all that. So I come over backstage right behind this wall. I literally, while you guys were wrapping up that last song and the bumper video and whatever, I am like shouting down a little mini panic attack. And then quite physically getting down on a knee behind the stage. And just saying a prayer. Because in that moment, guys, you find out what your house is built on. When the storms hit, you find out what your house is built on. In that moment, it didn't matter who I knew. It didn't matter how good I had been in my life. It didn't matter how much money I had in my bank account at that moment. None of that mattered. It didn't change anything and couldn't change anything. Much of what we try to build our houses on or make them about meant nothing in that moment. It was a moment to come back to that which holds my life steady, the rock, and say, God, I need you. I need you in this moment. I don't even know what just happened. I don't know fully the severity of what went on. I need you to be with her. I need your help. I need to get through this. I'll apologize to third service. I don't even know what I said, third service. But on the other side of it, we were able to go up and meet her up in Kokomo and get her checked out. And we thought there might have been something broken, but it wasn't. And everything, it's okay. It's okay. A little banged up, but she's okay. But in those moments, when the storms hit, you find out what your life is built on. And you find out if you've chosen some other way of establishing foundation, if it's your self-reliance, or if it's your feelings, or if it's other people's opinions, or if it's wealth or pleasure. All of those are shifting sand in that moment when a real storm hits. And so then you start to understand part of the reason why Jesus is asking this question is he's trying to get us to think about, if I'm not building on him, what am I building on? And if I am building on him, am I understanding the nature of how this relationship works? Maybe to ask it a different way, we should ask this question: is Jesus my Lord, or is he just my consultant? Do I come to him in moments of crisis? Do I come to him for some wisdom here and there or some advice in a situation? Or is he king, master, over all, and everything in my life is submitted to him? Part of what Jesus was beginning to reveal with his first disciples was this nature that connected him to Creator God. And that if you could understand him as Creator God, it had all kinds of implications into just the everyday nature of life as a human being. And so, what I'm saying is that this idea of consultant was just almost incompatible with who he actually was. Let me illustrate it this way. If the distance between Earth and the sun, they say, is 92 million miles. Let's say that for the sake of scale, the thickness of this sheet of paper represents 92 million miles. Okay? If we were then to measure the distance between us and the nearest star, if this sheet of paper represents the thickness is 92 million miles, we would have a stack of paper 70 feet high to show the distance to the nearest star. And if we were to take the galaxy that star was in and use the same scale and stack it up, it would actually be 310 miles high. And our galaxy is one of trillions of galaxies that are a part of this whole universe that is all being held together by the word and power of God. And we want to approach God and his son Jesus as a consultant. He can hold the whole world and all these universes together by the power of his word, but we think of him as merely a consultant. That's why I want to try to use the rest of my time to call us back, I believe, to what Jesus was trying to get at with this question, which was, what does living under the lordship of Jesus look like? How do I take steps to living under his lordship on a regular basis? I want to give you something daily to do, something fully to do, and something regularly to do. First of all, daily surrender to Jesus as leader of your life. Don't take for granted that one time when you were 10 or when you were 18 or when you were 30, one moment that you had with God where you had this feeling like He was really surrounding you and leading you to take a step of faith. Don't make it about a single moment. It's about an initial and an ongoing surrender, day after day after day. Jesus said, if anybody wants to come after me, he must deny himself daily, pick up his cross, and follow me. It's about letting go of control every day in every area of life. It's hard to do. We're stubborn people. We're stubborn people. We are the kind of people who will call him Lord and then not do what he says. I was at the chiropractor recently and just have always had some neck and back related stuff. So get in these rhythms where I'm going to the chiro. And I go and he cracks me good a couple times and gives me some stretching exercises to do 3 times a day. Come back and see me in a week. And I'm like, okay. And so I come back in a week. He's like, how you doing? I'm like, well, I'm still hurting. Okay. Where are you hurting? We talked through that. Did you do the stretching exercises that I asked you to do? No. I said, no, I didn't do it. And he goes, well, that wasn't very smart, was it? And I said, no. And he goes, so what do you think will make your neck feel better? And I'm like, do the exercises. And he's like, you're smarter than you look. I feel like this is a conversation that we have with God a lot, where it's a matter of surrender. It's a matter of it's not a matter of information. We like to think it is. I need to know a little more. I need to learn a little more. No. You're educated well beyond your level of obedience. You need to just say yes to what he's calling you to daily surrender to him as Lord and leader of your life. That when you come into collision with what you want and with what he's calling you, he leads, not you. Maybe to further this, here's something to do fully. Practice full and timely obedience to God's plainly spoken truth. I'll give you that there are plenty of places in the Bible that are a little hard to understand, a little hard to read, make sense of. But there are also plenty of places that just don't require interpretation. They are really easy to understand. And the problem with the Bible is not that it's hard to understand for most of us, it's that it's demanding. It's that it's calling us into change. And so we've got to learn to let the text in, right? Get into the Word. This series we're in is a great moment to do that. If you haven't picked up one of the books to walk through the series, there's a reading plan to go through the Gospel of Luke over the course of these 12 weeks. Just a little bit of reading every day would put you in the Word. If you've never done anything like that, this would be a great starting point. You have to let the text in to start, but then you have to let the text win. It's not enough just to read it or to say my eyeballs touched words. It's like I've got to respond to what I'm seeing, to what I'm reading. I love the story that takes place just one chapter earlier from where we were in Luke chapter 5. It's a story of Peter. He's been out fishing and he's been very, very unsuccessful. All night, fished all night, didn't catch anything. And Jesus is teaching in the morning. Peter in the morning is mending his nets. That's kind of a sign that we're done here. It's been a miserable experience. And I know there's a lot of fishermen probably in the room, and you always believe that next cast is going to be the big one, right? You live for the next one. This is going to be it. This is going to be it. But there's a point also when you go, just not my day. It's just not my day. I'm going to go home. That's where Peter was. And so Jesus, this master teacher, comes up to him that after a whole night of completely failed fishing, he goes, hey, go throw your net one more time back in. And Simon answered, this is Luke 5:5. Master, we've worked hard all night and we haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I'll let down my nets. That is a picture. That is a picture of responding fully, totally, completely in the moment to what God was calling him to do. And what happens? He pulls in the greatest haul of his fishing career. Never seen anything like it. And it all hinged on him doing exactly what Jesus called him to do. See, it's easy to say, yep, I'm going to do this. Yep, I'm going to do it. But here's what's going to happen as soon as you actually have an opportunity. You're going to be tempted to either, not just to not do it, but you're going to be tempted to delay it or to cut a corner and kind of partially obey it. Listening is not doing. Delayed obedience is disobedience. Partial obedience is disobedience. But it's about learning in the moment that what he has for me is what I actually want for myself. It's the best life. It's a life that I can't see through my own wisdom. I got to trust him. I got to respond to what he's plainly and obviously spoken. The last thing is this: to regularly inspect for alignment of faith and behavior. Go back and rewind the tape and see if there's moments where my faith and my behavior are incongruent. They are not aligned. They are not fitting together. Heard a story about a police officer that pulled somebody over, and the guy says, "Officer, I wasn't speeding, was I? I didn't think I was, and I didn't run any lights. So why'd you pull me over?" He goes, "Well, I noticed that as you were riding the tail of that person in the left-hand lane, that as you couldn't get around them, you finally in the right-hand lane very quickly, nearly recklessly, shoved over into the right-hand lane. And as you went by, you extended your middle finger through the window to them as you drove past. I watched that. And then I watched when that van then, right after that maneuver, came over in front of you, you pounding the wheel and shouting something at them at the next light that you went. And I saw the bumper sticker on the back of your car that said, 'God loves you and I do too.' I just assumed the car is stolen, so I'm trying to figure out if this is its rightful owner." Sometimes the bumper sticker that we wear says, "I'm a follower of Jesus." But if we were to rewind the tape and be honest, there's moments where we are not, there is a complete misalignment of who we say we are, what we say we believe, and how we're actually walking and how we're living. Maybe a way to ask it is your obedience up to date? Or are there some doors in your house that you have kind of locked God out of and said, "There's parts of my life that I'm willing to go with you on. I like to read your word and I like to have you speak to me, but then there's some other things that I'm not too interested in changing." Are there areas where you've tried to basically prevent access to? Or are you an open book? Are you allowing God to regularly look into your life and call you out in the most helpful of ways? David paints a picture of this in Psalm 139, verse 23, when he says, "Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." I think ultimately that's the response that this question Jesus asked is aiming at. That you could honestly say, "You know what? I don't know why there are so many times that I say you're my Lord, but I don't live like it. I'm inviting you into my life and into this moment to help me understand what it is that I keep believing is greater than you. And I'm inviting you to help me have the courage to choose you over all other things. To respond. And that's what I want to invite you to do today, to respond to Jesus, not as consultant, but as Lord. As Lord. If you've never done that, if you've never even thought about the difference or thought about what it would be like to fully and completely yield your life to the Creator of the universe, as we sing this next song, I want to invite you If you'd like to talk about that or pray about that with me, I'll be standing in the back. Would love to meet you. You can use the code on the screen as well if you'd like to begin a dialogue after the service. Having said that, if you have made Jesus Lord and Savior of your life, I want you just to daily embrace the paradox that surrendering, which sometimes feels like losing, is actually winning. Embrace that paradox. Do what he says and watch him open up blessing after blessing after blessing in your life. Will you stand with me and will you pray?